This video will cover exponents and related concepts. This will be part 2. I'll link part 1 to in the description below. And this again is supposed to be 6th grade level based on the information I've gotten from my granddaughter. Part 1, we covered the definition of an exponent as a base, and then the n is the exponent. And the exponent tells you that you take the base as a factor n times. So a few things to go over. We'll expand on some of the things we did in part 1. So let's just review. So if I have a base of 2 and an exponent of 4, again, this means that the base is taken as a factor 4 times. So this will be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Just multiply 2 at a time. So 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. And then multiply those out. 4 times 4 is 16. But let's suppose I have this now. Suppose I have negative 2, and I put a 4 there. And down on this one, I'm going to put negative 2 in parentheses to the 4th power. It's very important that you identify the correct base. So in the second one, this one here, because I have the minus 2 in parentheses, that tells me that the base is negative 2. So this is negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. So again, you multiply these out. So negative times a negative is a positive. You gotta know your rules for sign numbers. So negative times a negative, that's negative times negative 2. Multiply a 2 into 2, that's 4. And a negative times a negative is a positive. So I get that. I get negative 2 times a negative 2. Negatives cancel out. Anytime you multiply 2 negatives, that becomes positive. So it's 2 times 2, that's 4. And then 4 times 4, they're both positive. Understood. If you don't have a sign, it's understood to be positive, so it's 16. Now let's look at the first one. If I don't have parentheses on this negative 2, then the base is not a negative 2. It's a 2 only. So you put the negative down, and then the base is 2. So it's 4 factors of 2. So notice the difference here would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4, and then 4 times 4 is 16. So notice that in this case, this comes out to a negative 16. So it does make a difference whether you have parentheses on the base or not. Now, if you have something like this, 2 squared, or this, there's no difference there because we don't have any negative. So 2 squared is 2 times 2. That's still going to be 4. Put a 2 on this one. Because there's no negative in there, the base is still 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. There you have it. Notice, if you have a negative 2 to the 3rd power, that means you multiply 3 factors of negative 2. Got parentheses on it. So this is negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. A negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 2 times a negative 2 is a positive 4. Let's still get a negative here. 4 times a negative 2, that's positive times a negative is a negative. This is negative 8. So this is your answer for that one. Now let's suppose that I write it without the parentheses. I just put it this way. Those are different. Because in this one, the second one, the base is 2. The negative is not included. So I would just put the negative out here. And then, okay, 3 factors of 2 would be 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 more is 8, bring down the negative. Different problems, but the answer comes out the same. Well, you're going to have some issues if this has been an even number. So notice that if it's even, okay, if I write that, the base is 2. So it's just 2 factors and bring down the negative, and then 2 times 2 is 4, bring down the negative. That's negative 4. But notice, I have it in parentheses. Now the base is negative 2 because I have parentheses on the negative also. So this would be negative 2 times negative 2. In this case, a negative times a negative is a positive. So in this case, negative 2 times negative 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and the negatives cancel out. So notice there is a difference. If I have it like this, the answer is negative 4. If I have it like this with the parentheses, it's positive 4. So it's important to know, let's say I have a negative, let's say I have a 1 to the 10th power. 1 to the 10th power. The base is 1. that means 10 factors of 1. So it's 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. 1 times 1 times 1 is always 1. Multiply anything by 1, you get the same thing back. So if you have 10 ones multiplied together, the answer is going to be 1. Now let's suppose I have negative 1 to the 50th power. That means negative 1, I don't have parentheses on the negative, so that would be negative and then 1. So if I write it this way, you look at that as 50 factors of 1 is still going to be 1, and then times the negative, that'll be a negative 1. But if you have negative 1 to the 50th power, that means 50 factors of negative 1. So obviously, it doesn't matter what the factors are. If they're all positive, it doesn't matter what the exponent is here. Whether it's even or odd, it's going to come out positive. But when you have a odd number of negatives multiplied, the answer is going to be negative. So notice here, 50 is even. So I have 50 factors of negative 1. That's just going to be 1. But if I have 21 factors of negative 1, negative times a negative cancels. So since I have an odd number here, I'll be able to pair all of them out together. Negative, negative, but then there's going to be one negative left over because there's still 21. If this is 20, and I have parentheses this way, this would just be 1. But because it's an odd, this is negative 1. So that's going to determine what your sign is. Again, if you have an odd number of factors, negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. If you have an odd number, see, these two would cancel to a positive, but you're always going to have one left over when the number of factors, negative factors, is odd. So this will come out to a negative 1. But when you have a negative, or an even number rather, of negative factors, so we have negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. See, these two become positive. These two become positive. So you got a positive 1 times positive 1 is 1. Make sure you understand that, and make sure there is a difference, especially when the exponent is even, as to whether it has parentheses, the base has parentheses or not. So let's look at some examples, a little bit different here. Let's suppose we have 2 to the third plus 4 to the third. What's this equal to? This is 2 times 2 times 2 plus, this is 4 squared, that's 4 times 4. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. 4 times 4 is 16. 8 and 16 is 24. That's the answer for this one. Next one, 7 squared plus 5 squared. So first you have to figure out what these numbers are, and then you just add regular addition. So 7 squared means 7 times 7. 7 times 7 is 49. And then 5 squared means 4 factors of 5. The base is 5. So this is going to give me then 49 plus, then 5 times 5 is 25, and then I have 5 times 5 again, that's 25. I have 5 times 5 is 25, so these two numbers give me 25. 5 times 5 is 25. It's all multiplication, so then it's 25 times 25. Multiply those out, that's 625. And then just add in 625, 674. You can pause the video whenever you want. See if you can work these out. Now, if you got signed numbers, it works the same way. So negative 3 to the third. Now notice it has parentheses on this one. So this is going to be negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. So negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. Positive 9. You multiply two negatives, it comes out positive. So that's positive 9. But then you multiply by another negative. So that's a negative 27. Plus, in the next one, notice it doesn't have parentheses on this one. So in this case, the negative is not squared, it's 4 squared. 4 squared is 16, and then you apply the negative. So that's negative 16. Same thing with this one. So it's minus, the base here is 5, not negative 5. So it's 5 squared is 25. So here basically, because this is a plus and then a minus and then a minus, I could make this, another way to look at this is that's just a negative 25. So it's like you're adding negative 27, a negative 16, and a negative 25. So this one's going to be negative. They're all negative, so the answer is going to be negative. Plus here, but again, this is negative. This is negative. So it's negative, and then you take 27, add 16, and we already brought down the negative. So this is 7 and 6 is 13. Carry the 1, that's 4 and 1. 3 and 1 rather, it's 4. And 25, 3 and 5 is 8. 4 and 2 is 6. So the answer is minus 68. Again, we're adding three numbers. They're all really negative. We just bring down the sign. Add the 27, the 16, and the 25. Okay, the next one we have 5. And we have negative 2 to the third power. So this is all multiplication. But we need to figure out what all these fractions are first. So first we find negative 2 to the third, and then find 3 to the second, and then figure the final answer. So negative 2 to the third, remember I have parentheses on the negative also, so it's 3 factors of negative 2. So negative 2 times negative 2. That's 2 negatives multiplied is a positive. 4 times the negative 2 again, go negative 8. So this is negative 8. 3 is your base squared. 3 times 3 is 9. I got a negative times a positive. Signs are different. The answer is going to come out negative. And then 8 times 9 is 72. So negative 72 is the answer to that one. Now if you have fractions, it works the same way. So notice the first one I have parentheses minus 1/2. So that's the same thing as minus 1/2 times minus 1/2. And then you just multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators. So a negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 1 times a negative 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. So that and part right there is the same thing as 1/4. Then I have a minus. And then 3/2 squared. That's the same thing as 3/2. The base is 3/2. So it's 3/2 times 3/2. Okay, multiply. Numerators. 3 times 3, that's 9. That's the numerator. Multiply the denominators. 2 times 2, that's 4. Okay, now we're subtracting fractions. Remember, you can't add or subtract fractions unless you have the same denominator. These have the same denominator. So all I have to do is bring down that denominator. 4. Combine the numerators. So in this case it's 1 minus 9. Had this been a plus, then I would just put a plus right there. But in this case, I have 1 subtract 9. That's the same thing as saying 1 plus a negative 9. So it's negative 9 and 1. Signs are different. I subtract 1 from the 9, I get 8. Take the sign of the larger number, which should be 9. So it would be negative 8, that's over 4. Now we have a division here. We simplify, but in this case 4 goes into 8. So we can just say it's a negative 8 divided by a positive 4. Well, you have a negative divided by a positive. Signs are opposite, so it's going to be negative. So this will be a negative, and then 4 into 8 is 2. So the answer comes out to a negative 2. So we'll do a little bit more next time with more fractions, just in case you haven't gotten to fractions. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.